prophecy of mountains flee. In the end times, the people will flee to the mountains and the caves and try to hide in their deep underground military bases and their bunkers and their apocalyptic bunkers and hideaways. But this prophecy in specific is revealing to what will occur to the beast and his armies as they go to make war with Christ in the desert in the east of Jerusalem. And what occurs in the prophecy and the revealing of this is that the Lord knows what they're going to do before they do it. And this will become clear. The beginning of this, on the day of the Lord, it begins with an earthquake. Revelation chapter 11, verse 11 says, "And after 3 days and a half, the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them." And this is the earthquake from the resurrection, and the ground opens and splits. And we see that in Revelation chapter 11, verse 13 says, "In the same hour there was a great earthquake, and a tenth part of the city fell, and in the earthquake were the slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were affrighted, and gave glory to the God of heaven." This earthquake is the same earthquake of the resurrection. It's also mentioned in Revelation chapter 16, verse 18 and 19. "And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath, and every island fled away, and the mountains were not found." Now watch this. It's very important to take note here that at the earthquake, the city of Jerusalem is broken and split, and then ultimately there's a rift in the Mount of Olives, and that there's no mountains found. Yes, on that day of the Lord is going to shake the foundations of the earth in his wrath. And the ground will shake, and the graves will spit out its inhabitants as the graves break open. And on that day, the Lord will make the earth reel to and fro as the mountains flee, and even the mountains will bow before him as the earth is flattened. On that day, you see the scroll. On that day, the Lord will clothe the face of the earth with a black veil as he cuts off the wicked on that day. And here's the time of the great earthquake. Zechariah chapter 14, verse 4 and 5 talks about this event with the great earthquake. "And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south. And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal. Yea, ye shall flee, like as ye fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah the king of Judah. And the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with thee. And it shall come to pass in that day that light shall not be clear nor dark." Make note here that people are fleeing to the wilderness and to the mountains. And this is the day of the Lord when it's dark, as it was spoken of there about the earthquake and so forth. Revelation chapter 6, verse 12 through 14 talks about the earthquake, and we know that it's when the sky goes black. "And I beheld, when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places." So we see that every island and mountain were moved out of their places, and the great earthquake occurs on this day, which is the same day that we read in Revelation chapter 16, verse 20, where it says, and every island fled away, and mountains were not found. Now remember this for later. Revelation chapter 6, verse 15 says, and the kings of the earth, and the great men, and rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every freeman hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. So what we see here is that they flee to the mountains to try to hide to the mountains, right? And cry out to the rocks of the mountains to fall on them. Watch this. Revelation chapter 6, verse 16 and 17. And said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? On this day, there's that great shaking in the earthquakes, and the people try to run to the mountains. And when it's quaking, they're not going to be able to stand. And this is a prophecy of the Old Testament as well, with the prophets of old. But they try to run to the mountains, and the earth starts quaking and shaking, and mountains even flee from them, and mountains split, and there's going to be a great cataclysmic earthquake that occurs from the resurrected dead that rises as they flee to the mountains, trying to flee to the mountains, and the rocks will fall on them. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 19 talks about this. And they shall go into the holes of the rocks and into the caves of the earth for fear of the Lord and for the glory of his majesty when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. He arises to shake terribly the earth with a great earthquake. And it continues on. In verse 20, in that day a man shall cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which they had made each one for himself to worship, to the moles and to the bats. They're going to try to throw their idols in the caves to hide them so they're not accountable for their idolatry. To go into the clefts of the rocks and into the tops of the ragged rocks for the fear of the Lord and for the glory of his majesty when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. They try to go and flee into the mountains when he comes. And Christ, when he was put to death, he prophesied this with two witnesses. He prophesied this day. And in the end, the Lord will also prophesy this with two witnesses. Watch this. Luke chapter 23, verse 30 through 32. Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. For if they do these things in a green tree, what shall be done in the dry? And there were also two other malefactors led with him to be put to death. This was spoken at that time, that the law may be fulfilled, that out of the mouth of two or three witnesses a matter shall be established, as Christ is prophesying this with two witnesses of his death next to him. A prophetic foreshadow of the end. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 15 says, one witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity, for any sin, and any sin that he sinneth at the mouth of two witnesses or at the mouth of three witnesses shall the matter be established. And this is prophetic foreshadow of the Lord having two witnesses that testify of his death, that are prophesying about these mountains and the rocks and the clefts. Revelation 11:3. And I will give power unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. And as that drought occurs, the things that are green will no longer be green, but it will be dry. For during those days of that 1,260 days, the drought occurs from the rains being withheld. Revelation chapter 11, verse 6. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. And this is the 1,260 days in which the trees that were green will then be dry, just like Christ's warning, as he said in the book of Luke, chapter 23. Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. In verse 31 he says, for if they do these things in the green tree, what shall be done in the dry? And there were after him also two malefactors that led to death with him. And what will occur? Two led to death like Christ, dying and resurrecting after the third day. Revelation chapter 11, verse 10 and 11 says, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwell on the earth. And after 3 days and a half, the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. This is the same hour of that great earthquake, the testimony of that day in which the mountains will flee and split, and a great earthquake will occur from the resurrection. I saw those people fleeing. I saw them. They'll run. They'll run and flee. Just like it says in Zechariah chapter 14, verse 5, you shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azel. Yeah, ye shall flee like as ye fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah the king, and the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with thee. They flee to the mountains and the rocks and the caves, but what happens to them? The Lord will flatten the mountains on them. They'll be stuck. They'll be covered with rocks. They'll be crushed by the mountains. Revelation chapter 6, verse 14. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. What happens when they run to the mountains and that great earthquake occurs? They try to run in and hide, right? And the mountains fall on them. The rocks cover them. The mountains are flattened with them in it. Revelation chapter 16, verse 20. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. The mountains are not found because they are leveled as the people try to run and hide to them. They're leveled. The earth is shaken terribly by the Lord on that day. Zechariah chapter 14, verse 10. All the land shall be turned as a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem. And it shall be lifted up, and inhabitants in her place, from Benjamin's gate unto the place, the first gate, unto the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananiel unto the king's winepresses. The mountains are leveled like hot wax, as Micah chapter 1, verse 3 through 4 says. For behold, the Lord cometh forth out of his place, and will come down and tread upon the high places of the earth, and the mountains shall be molten under him, and the valleys shall be cleft as wax before the fire, as the waters that are poured down a steep place. The earthquakes tremble, and the mountains melt like wax and go flat. His lightnings enlightened the world, the earth saw and trembled. The hills melted like wax at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the Lord of the whole earth. And as the mountains quake and melt, and that earthquake's occurring, who's able to stand on that day? Nahum chapter 1, verse 5 and 6. The mountains quake at him, and the hills melt, and the earth is burned at his presence, yea, the world and all that dwell therein. Who can stand before his indignation? And who can abide in the fierceness of his anger? His fury is poured out like fire, and the rocks are thrown down by him. As the prophecy says, who can stand before him on that day, as he's shaking the earth? So much that mountains fall, you think you're going to stand before the Lord? You're going to bend your knee. You're going to be brought to your knees on that day. It will be such a shaking that you will be forced to your knees to bow before him. As the earth shakes, even the mountains bow. Revelation chapter 6, verse 16 and 17. And said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Everyone's brought to their knees. Everyone will bow in the earth. As the earth shakes, even the mountains come tumbling down and split and bow before the King. And the people who think that they have risen themselves up to exalt themselves above the throne of Christ will be brought down low. Every valley that have already been humbled will rise up as the Lord exalts them. And those who have exalted themselves as mountains will be brought down low. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 3 through 5. The voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough places plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it. The mountains will fall on them as they run to the mountains to hide. Even the mountains want no part with them. Revelation 6, verse 16. And said unto the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. Just as Christ had prophesied. Luke chapter 23, verse 30. Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. The mountains and the rocks covering them as they cry to the mountains, hide me, kill me, throw rocks on me and hide me and kill me, bury me in you. Hosea chapter 10, verse 8. The high places also of Avon, the sin of Israel shall be destroyed. The thorn and the thistle shall come up on their altars, and they shall say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us. And everyone is brought to their knees. Revelation chapter 6, verse 17. For the great day of his wrath is come. Who is able to stand? So who is able to stand on that day? Nahum chapter 1, verse 6. Who can stand before his indignation? Who can abide in the fierceness of his anger? His fury is poured out like fire, and the rocks are thrown down by him. The rocks are thrown down by him. Who can stand? Every knee will bow on that day, even the mountains. Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 6. He stood and measured the earth. He beheld and drove asunder the nations, and the everlasting mountains were scattered. The perpetual hills did bow. His ways are everlasting. And in the vision, as I sit in darkness, I talk, but only hear echoes. Like the cave of Elijah, I sit in Sheol. There is no light in the days of darkness. The mountains tremble in fear and don't want to hide the inhabitants themselves. Yes, even the mountains flee from him on that day. Their highness is brought low, and the mountains will bow before him on that terrible day. The mountains will fall and crush to kill those who hide in them, try to hide in them on that day. Out of fear of the Lord, the mountains themselves will bow, and every knee will bow and confess that Jesus Christ, Yeshua, is the Messiah, and that he's the Lord. The mountains will bow on that day. And this is the prophecy of mountains flee.